Hi, folks. I'm Brandon from Twister Talk. We're re-airing classic shows for you to enjoy. So settle in and have fun. As always, thanks for listening. All right, on with the show.
It's a twister! It's a twister! Back up! Back up! Back up!
Every time I hear that, I just keep thinking he's setting it back 50 years. It's Twister Talk. I'm Gary.
I'm Sue.
I'm Brandon.
And we're back with another episode of our show. Hey, thanks everybody who listens. We do appreciate it very much.
Tell all your friends, especially the ones you don't want to keep.
That's right. You want to get rid of your friends, this will be a deal breaker.
This will be a deal breaker.
Anyway.
Or at the very least, it will show you who your real friends are.
That's right.
That's true. You never know.
Darn.
We've not done a poll yet on the effect on marriages. We are looking into that. We'll let you know. But I think the same numbers will be there too.
Yeah, I think so.
But on a quick, serious note, thank you to everyone who's listening.
Yep.
And we hope to, as Gary said, push to bigger and better things, and we hope you'll come along with us.
That's right. And don't forget to check out the Twister Talk page on Facebook.
Yes, and it is indeed called Twister Talk with Gary, Brandon, and Sue. And you can look it up, find it, and we try to post things that are going on, and every once in a while I will post something humorous as well.
That's right. Sue does a great job with pictures and keeping it updated on a more regular basis, and I do appreciate that. And, of course, you can catch Twister Talk there, too.
That's right.
It's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
You want to be.
It's like tornadoes themselves, everywhere.
That's everywhere. Speaking of tornadoes, Ohio has not been spared. People think, well, not much ever happens in Ohio. No,
yeah,
actually,
what's really interesting is a lot of people do not realize that we do have a pretty good number of tornadoes here in Ohio.
Yes, and we've got smacked a couple of times right across the chops.
I mean, the one everybody knows about is Xenia, of course, but there have been also a number of others that have caused a lot of devastation. And
one of the ones that's kind of forgotten, but actually was a pretty significant tornado, was the tornado in Cardington, Ohio.
Yeah, Cardington is a town that is somewhat north of Columbus.
Right. And June 13th of 1981, that was a bad weather day across the state, but Cardington took the brunt of it. The Cardington tornado was I believe that was an F3. It touched down about 3:30 in the afternoon and moved right through the city, basically. And it was, it was a rainy, heavy day. The storms got worse, and it talks about here in the report that 3 people are out there watching the storm, the clouds and everything, and we're standing at the railroad track on East William Street in Cardington during the downpour and noticed 3 huge clouds come together, and what's horrified is the clouds became one and tore a path through town, debris flying everywhere as they stared in disbelief.
I wonder what exactly that description speaks to.
I've always wondered about that because over the years, back in the early days of the century, people were reporting there's 2 clouds come together.
Yeah, you would hear that a lot.
The 2 clouds come together. My guess, it's the obviously the mesocyclone that's rotating, the wall clouds rotating. The way it looks sometimes is kind of hard to explain.
Yeah.
Clouds, you got scud forming in the middle and then rising up.
Yeah, I just bring that up because you see that description a lot in older discussions of tornadoes.
Yeah, and so we see it
That's
there.
Interesting.
It was hard to put that into words.
Yeah, and it's at a time when everybody had not seen endless films of tornadoes, which we all have now.
Brandon, Sue, we've all seen video where literally all of a sudden you see the cloud rotating, bang, all of a sudden there's a funnel, and it's a big one. It just shows up either way, and it's got to be, if you've never seen one, it's an incredible thing to see. So anyway, so Cardington was whacked pretty bad. I mean, it was a
town of about 2,000.
Yep.
And let me just a quick geographic reference here for those who don't know. Cardington is located in north central Ohio. If you were traveling northward from Columbus to Sandusky, it is about a third of the way up.
I've seen pictures of Cardington after the tornado, and they're pretty significant damage.
It was devastating.
It really was. It went right down through town. I think it was ranked.
Now here it says 4 people were killed.
4 people, okay. I was ranked F3 or 4.
I believe F3.
F3, okay. I got the notes in front of me, but I'm having trouble just looking at it. But anyway, it's amazing. 1981 that day was a very severe weather day across the state. Now, Cardington was in the headline, but I have personal recollections of that day too, because the weather got worse and worse and worse as the day went on. So I'm looking, I'm leaving work that night. I worked over at Eastland Mall, was leaving work, and I looked to the north, and I hear the sirens going off, and I look to the north. There's this, huge, giant wall cloud.
Yeah.
Big mesocyclone. You could see it was rotating. So I was like, okay, I'm not going that way anyway, but I'm going to go the other way. I could see it, and I later found out it did not produce a tornado. However, the wind gusts there destroyed several tents and places. In Whitehall, they were having a festival.
Ah, okay.
And there was a lot of damage there. There were some injuries, but the festival was pretty much destroyed by the wind. I would
think so, yes.
Yeah, the winds were, they said the winds were probably 70 to 90 miles an hour, maybe even stronger. It was a downburst from that wall cloud.
Yeah.
No tornado, but now it did produce a tornado later in Licking County.
Ah, okay.
So that's what happened.
And this was the same day as the Cardington tornado.
Yes, the same day. Severe weather all across the Buckeye State that day, from Cardington through Columbus, down into Dayton, down to the southern parts of the state. And actually there was some severe weather again to the north. But the strongest storms went through central Ohio that afternoon and evening. That was Cardington and a few other places. It was a pretty bad day. Now, a friend of mine from high school, she worked for the state at that time. And she has a great story, because she actually talks about that. She asked, had we ever done a story on the Cardington tornado? At the time, my friend was working for the State Development Department. Jim Rose was the governor. She had to find grant money to replace 3 fire trucks and get a new roof. Wanted to mention that she was involved because she helped send aid there. Now, at the time, Governor Rose took all the credit. I don't want him coming back to haunt me.
What a surprise.
So anyway, I thought that was interesting. So, she did a great job, and she's to be commended. I won't mention her name because she asked me not to, but she's to be commended because she helped Cardington get back on their feet. Yeah,
and what's really interesting is all these years after the storm, the town really is still in recovery mode. Did a lot of damage.
A lot of damage. It's an area that kind of is an economic depressed area. And so we know of storms that have wiped out small towns, and the towns never came back.
Cardington survived.
Yeah, Cardington survived. Greensburg was basically wiped off the face of the earth, but it came back stronger, better, and smarter. But there have been towns all over the country that
Manchester, yeah,
it was Manchester, South Dakota, that F4 that hit there. In fact, you hear the backup that Reed's saying, that's from that tornado.
Oh, wow.
That is from the Manchester tornado, yeah. He got a little too close.
Reed does that now and then.
Yeah, and so, but that's the one in Manchester, South Dakota, never came back. Brandon, any thoughts about what we're discussing here at the moment? It's pretty interesting time about Ohio. We do get tornadoes. Sometimes we get bad ones.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. And even though Xenia obviously tends to kind of suck all the oxygen out of the room, so to speak, when discussing Ohio and severe weather, it certainly does get its fair share. People certainly think of Indiana and when they talk about Midwestern states, and Ohio being just to the east of Indiana, it also gets whomped sometimes as well. I'm was just reading through some of the accounts here of the Cardington tornado, and you mentioned Governor Rhodes at the time heading to the community right away afterwards,
right,
and calling in National Guard troops. Not only to help out with rescue efforts, but also, unfortunately, to prevent any looting from taking place. And it's interesting to me, I'm seeing a few descriptions here. It's interesting how the description, it looks like a bomb went off, is such a common way that people describe an area that's been hit by a tornado. And hopefully, we've all seen YouTube videos now.
Right.
It should hopefully give you an idea of the level of destruction that can happen. There's an account here of a fireman reporting that 2 mobile homes were basically just lifted from their foundations and thrown into the air, and they didn't even know where they went. Yeah, there were 2 people, unfortunately, killed during that storm. One dead on arrival, the other a 9-month-old. So unfortunately, an infant died during treatment. The hospital there treated about 45 people for injuries, mostly things like cuts and scrapes. 3 people admitted and then later transferred to other hospitals. Utility lines, of course, down all over the place.
Right.
And Carol Sears, a sheriff's department dispatcher in Mount Gilead, about 6 miles away. Hope I pronounced that correctly.
It's Gilead, but that's okay.
Gilead?
Yep.
Okay. Had eventually confirmed that pretty much all the manpower they could muster, not just from Cardington, but from all the surrounding small communities, and even from some larger communities, ended up kind of focusing on that area, just to help out with all the
Right.
rescue relief efforts. So
Checking the stats, Franklin County, Sue, has the most tornadoes from 1950, 1999.
That's kind of fascinating.
Even more than Cincinnati or Dayton. We've had more tornadoes in this city.
Luckily, they haven't done with a few exceptions, they haven't done a lot of damage.
The month of May in 1973 was one of the just bizarre weather events in
It was
Columbus.
busy.
It was very busy. We had tornado watches on Tuesdays and Fridays like clockwork. The first one was the strongest tornadoes break, but of the gatherings that May. Of course, on May 10th, 1973, at 6 o'clock in the evening, Willard, Ohio got struck with a tornado, a multi-vortex F3 tornado that went through a mobile home park and just basically wiped it off the face of the earth. And
As indeed tornadoes are wont to do.
6 people died in that tornado event. A lot of the restaurants, a lot of the major business sections of Willard were destroyed. They did build most of that back. Actually, the most significant tornado in Columbus history, northern Champaign County is where it started. It touched down in Champaign County around 6:45. This tornado was an EF3 ranking, moved different directions, moved southeastward, and then shifted more toward the east. What we saw is, well, let me just put it this way. My dad, we were under tornado watch. My dad, my brother, and I were going over to pick up something from somebody who worked with my dad at a company. We're going over, and I noticed, Sue, I looked downtown on 70, and it looked like a black haze, a dark haze over down. In other words, you couldn't see the top of the buildings.
Yeah.
You're just like that. It looks so bizarre. So right then I knew, something's up, because I had never seen clouds like that before. And so the tornado sirens started to go off. The sirens went off, civil defense, and we picked up the stuff. We were driving back. We were going west to Refugee Road to get on 33 back to 70. And we all looked down Refugee Road. It's like, what is that? And then it struck me, a tornado. That was the first one I'd ever seen. There was the tornado. I mean, it was right there.
Wow.
It was about 3 miles distance. But you could see it, man. And we saw it. It's like, and we all said, that's a tornado. That's a tornado. And we just absolutely, I just like, oh my gosh, my dad, got the pickup on the freeway, and we got back to the house. And in all the years that we've been through different weather, that is the only time my father actually said, we may need to go to the basement. We may have to go to the basement. It was raining like crazy outside. We did not have any hail, but it was raining very, very hard. And it's funny because I just read a book in the school library about tornadoes. It was a well-written book. I can't remember the title anymore, but I could tell by the way the clouds were. I said, Dad, I think it's going to pass to our south. And it did. The darkest clouds were to our south, and the lighter clouds, a lot of lightning and rain, but they were all over it. And I remember reading in the book that usually when it's raining, there's less of a likelihood of a tornado being in the rain. Of course, we now know that's not quite as true as we thought it was, because many tornadoes are rain wrapped. Finally, the storm stopped. I went outside. Our house faced the east to look, and I could see the back end, the flanking cumulus line, and this huge wall cloud moving to the northeast. It did touch down again, I think, in northeastern Franklin County, and also it moved into Licking County. Some damage up there, but not a lot. But I remember that was that's a vivid memory.
Yeah, it was a vivid memory, and really kind of a long track, not really a long track tornado, but a long track tornado family.
Right.
That started out in Champaign County and east of Urbana, then struck north of Springfield and moved just to the north of London, and then West Jefferson, and mostly on the damage on the south side of town. Harrisburg Pike, places like that. It destroyed the South High Drive-In at 3050 South High Street, destroying one of the screens. Came down near the intersection of Williams Road and Lockbourne Road, and lifted again until it reached Fairfield County, where it destroyed a mobile home. Affected a path of about 85 miles, and damaged or destroyed in Franklin County 97 homes and dozens of other buildings. Damage was estimated at above $1 million, which back in 1973, $1 million was a lot of money.
It was an event I still remember after all these years, 50 some years down the road. I can remember that event clear as day.
Yeah.
Because it was like, wow.
Luckily, there were no deaths and only 3 injuries.
Yes.
So for a long track event like this, it was quite fortunate.
And just one quick thing. One of my best friends in high school, Joe, he was shopping in Eastland Mall that night with his mom. And
Oh, that place was deadly.
yeah, and they said, we have to go in the hallways and the basement area of Eastland because a tornado warning, and it went south of them, but still it was causing issues. So Joe said, yeah, we're all crowded. Everybody in the mall, all the stores are throwing everybody. We're just like, get out, go in the shelter, go in the shelter. So everybody's taking shelter. And I'm like, he said it was really scary because he said you couldn't hear anything and it got deathly quiet, but you couldn't hear anything. So we wouldn't have known the tornado hit the mall or not, because I said, well, in hindsight, Joe, had, looking back, had the tornado hit for the mall, you would have heard it. And there is one picture that I have of that tornado, was taken by a photographer as it was going down, bypassing Hamilton Road and Williams Road. I will post that on the Facebook page. You can see that. That's along with the picture of the Willard tornado, which was a multi-vortex tornado.
Yeah.
And now the second tornado, or the third tornado reported here, from May 30th, 1973, I also saw that one.
Oh, really?
Yes. My friend Mike and I, we were on split schedule at Walnut Ridge at the time. And so juniors and seniors went from 7:30 till noon. And so Mike came back to our house, and had a little lunch, and we're sitting there. And of course, the sirens were going off. We could see it was very dark toward the airport. Yeah. And then we turned on the news, and said, tornado was touched down by the Defense Supply Construction Center. Mm-hmm. And so we went out in my backyard and looked north on Hamilton Road, and by God, there was a funnel.
It's amazing.
We were watching the funnel just go across the horizon there and going, well, it's not going to hit us. Mike goes, I know it's destroying things, but it looks so cool. Well, the reason he said that, because the dark skies were behind
yeah.
it, so it looked white. The funnel looked white.
Yeah, that's very photogenic, very beautiful.
Yeah, it's I guess whether it's good luck or bad luck is dependent upon the situation and what's specifically happening. But
right.
Just luck.
Yeah, it's interesting that May 10th, then May 25th, then May 30th, all of the same year. And 3 different tornadoes hit Columbus, Ohio. So, to reiterate again, Ohio definitely gets its share of severe weather. It may not necessarily grab all the headlines like some of the stuff out in the plains does.
Right.
Sometimes you do, i.e. Xenia, which, has kind of been beaten to death over the years.
Yes, they had a second tornado. What year was that, Gary?
2000. It was 2000.
Yeah, I remember that storm quite clearly, because obviously I did not see the tornado, but we had a beautiful roll cloud that went over that day.
Yeah. A sad story, but kind of like still kind of a little satirical. It's like the family lost their home in the 74 tornado, so they built a new home in another part of town. They lost it in the 2000 tornado.
Jeez.
And the guy said, I think the weather gods are trying to tell me something. I thought, Arizona on a mountaintop somewhere. You might be
or perhaps underground.
But what interests me about it, Brandon, is that was the first time that's when I started seeing supercells up close, where you could actually see the structure of the storm and everything. I mean, I saw pictures in magazines and books at the time, but to see those an actual physical reality, it was mind blowing. Everybody's freaking out at the storm center watching the structure. 17 years old going, this is really cool looking. It's like
the trouble is it's a dangerous phenomenon, but it is a beautiful phenomenon in its own way.
Yes, it is, and it's like many other weather events, even hurricanes or tsunamis to some degree could be seen as being beautiful from a distance, but
right.
You get up close and personal, you realize it's a different story. It's
you don't want to be close.
That tornado may look really good on camera when it's churning through a field, but when it's going through a subdivision, tearing up houses, and there might be people in those houses who are being injured or even killed, tends to be a little bit different story.
Well, tell you what, Brandon, any closing thoughts when we give it over to you for a minute or two? If you got any closing thoughts, lay it on us, man.
Well, really the main thing here is, as we've pointed out over the course of this particular episode, although the Buckeye State does not always get a whole lot of the spotlight, so to speak, in terms of severe weather, it is worth pointing out that it certainly does get its share. As we said, Xenia tends to grab the headlines a lot of times, right. Given what it's endured, and that's both noteworthy that people remember it, but it's also unfortunate at the same time that it's happened not just once but twice.
Yes.
So you can't,
really...
you can't forget that, There are people there who went through some serious trauma and, that have now to live with that for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
It is, and that's not just true of Xenia. That can be true of any tornado anywhere.
I would think so.
Yeah.
If you're the one whose house gets blown away, or you're the one who is injured or who loses a loved one to it, then you're the one who has to live with that, and it's not something you're going to forget.
That's very true.
It's worth, it's worth pointing out, and it's worth remembering, be it anywhere else or be it in Ohio, because, we're focusing on Ohio this time. There are other storms that happen, and just because they don't necessarily make the news doesn't mean that they weren't noteworthy or that they did not potentially inflict a lot of harm on people.
That's right.
That's a good point. I tell you what, on that point, we're going to say goodbye for this episode of Twister Talk. Hey, don't forget to check out Twister Talk on Facebook.
On Facebook.
And for Twister Talk, I'm Gary.
I'm Sue.
I'm Brandon.
Hey, we'll see you next time.